All right, moving on to our next conversation. Now, another issue right now is housing. The challenge of housing in Nigeria has become cause for concern among many Nigerians, even as the government continues to grapple with the constantly widening housing deficit. Nigeria's population expected to hit about 400 million by the year 2050. There's clearly the need to focus critical attention on this sector, which provides one of the basic necessities of life, which is actually shelter. So today we have on the program Mr. Andrew Chiponda, the Chief Executive Officer at Shelter Afrique, Pan-African Development Finance Institution. Great to have you on the program. Good morning.
Good morning, lady, and what a pleasure to be here in
Great to
lovely
have you.
Lagos. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so this housing issue, it's as far back as the 1990s.
Yeah.
We've heard of promises, housing for all.
Yeah.
And fast forward till 2020, we still have, the same problems. Housing deficit now is about 17 million in 2021. Quite a big number. What exactly is contributing to this widening gap?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And I have to say that housing is a basic human right to all Africans. We at Shelter Afrique, I think we believe that within our vision that we want to see decent and affordable homes for all Africans. What is contributing to this gap is that, of course, the population growth is growing. If you look at the current world population at about 1.2 billion, by 2050, you talked about Nigeria in 2050, globally, it will be at least double that, about 2.5 billion. What does it mean? Why is Nigeria most affected? Is because, of course, across the whole world, it is going to be the third most populous country after India and China. But in Africa, it will be the most populous. So you have two main factors. The first factor being the population growth, of which in Africa we are growing at a faster rate. The second is urbanization. This is, of course, specific to Africa, where people come from the rural areas to the urban areas to look for jobs, to look for growth. The urbanization rate is at about 4%. So we believe through our Center of Excellence in Shelter Afrique that 60% of the population will be in the urban area. So when you have this influx of people coming into the bigger towns without adequate preparation for their housing, you end up having a proliferation of slums. You talked of a figure of about 17 million. If you look at it throughout the whole of Africa, it's actually 56 million in Africa. So we also estimate, at an average of maybe $25,000 a house, you'd need at least $3 trillion. So housing, yes, is a crisis. That is how we view it. And as a result, it is caused by the urbanization rate. It's also caused by the growth in the population, which is inevitable, of course.
And there's also another issue of finance, because you might have to pay cash if you want to own a home. But, some new policies are coming where you can actually, pay, but finance is still a major issue. How is it?
So I think the most important thing is accessibility to finance. Now, if we look maybe from a Nigerian context, financing can be very costly. It can even go up to 25%. Then you also look at what product do you have to give to the beneficiary who needs to buy a house. If you look at the mortgage product, it's not suitable for Africa because you look at maybe even if you've got a tenure of, let's say, 20 years or so, the compound interest makes that house even more expensive, right? Then you also look at the mortgage penetration. Now, this is an area which is of concern. If you look at the mortgage penetration to GDP, Nigeria is at 0.5%. Now, does that make sense? You look at South Africa, it's at 16%. You look at Kenya, 2%. Can you see the issue in Africa where the mortgage product cannot be absorbed? If you go to Australia, it's 80%. You go to other countries like Canada, maybe 70%. It does present an opportunity. At the same time, is we have to review to look at appropriate products. So for us to get quicker take-up in terms of financing, you got to look at the demand side, people buying houses, making sure that the interest rates are affordable, the tenures are adequate so that you enhance affordability. If you look at those that are building houses, you need to have the type of funding that matches the project life cycle. Otherwise, the guys are in default before they finish the project. That is where Shelter Afrique is unique because we provide a product for the developers so that they're able to construct, because we understand the project life cycle. We also provide lines of credit to banks that want to issue mortgages or that want to provide incremental home loans so that as soon as you build, you also have offtake. But financing is an issue. It has always been an issue, but we are there to see how we can plug that gap by providing the appropriate products in the respective countries. Yeah.
But I've seen you've, you've solved most of these problems in, some other African countries.
Yeah.
But, Nigeria has a peculiar, to it. But what is the plan here for Nigeria?
Okay, so I'm very excited because Nigeria is very strategic for Shelter Afrique. They say you can't do business in Africa if you've not done it in Nigeria.
Right.
I want to give you a bit of a backdrop. We've done a lot of business in Nigeria. I think we've actually funded about 58 projects, about the equivalent in US dollar terms, about $200 million. But what is exciting now is for the very first time in Nigeria, we're launching a Naira bond. Why is that important is because we've always been giving money in US dollars to our developers, to the banks. But now with the devaluation of the exchange rate, that foreign exchange risk exposure, some struggle to pay back. So you got to listen to the market and ask, what does the market need? The market needs local Naira. So we are excited because we're in the process of launching a 250 billion Naira bond, of which the first series will be issued out, I'd say by January. That's when we are going to be doing our road shows. By March, we should actually already have full subscription of that. So the first series will be about 40 billion Naira. And why is that important? Is because the likes of the Real Estate Development Association of Nigeria, REDAN, will get access to funding. The likes of the banks that need funding in local currency will get access to funding. What are we doing? We are now taking money outside of pension funds, insurance institutions. We are redirecting that money and capital into housing. That is so important. But what makes us unique is we're not looking at the middle to upper. We're looking at large scale, low cost, but high quality housing. Because the biggest problem in Africa is one thing: it's affordability. If you get a product that's affordable, you're going to get take up, and then you're going to be able to improve the penetration, not only in mortgages, but also in home ownership. And for us, that's our core business, to ensure that all Africans have access to decent and affordable homes.
Affordable homes. That
Yeah.
sounds good.
Sure.
But in recent times, we've had issues around substandard, building, and we've seen the government actually looking at regulating, the real estate sector in Nigeria. But what can we, learn from other African countries as regards building?
Yeah, look, you see, regulation, of course, is very important. You have to have those institutions that are able to regulate the practices when it comes to building. We at Shelter Afrique, of course, are working on a model law where we want to come up with benchmark the appropriate regulation that can actually be able to be used for respective countries to be able to regulate the quality of building, the processes that need to be followed. You see, we operate in 44 countries. Of course, we've just onboarded South Sudan. And in those countries, you have different regulations to be able to, ensure that the building is in accordance to certain rules and regulations. But as you have regulation, you also need flexibility for alternative building methodologies. So we're operating in Rwanda right now, Togo, and Cameroon. And what we're doing differently, although it's a bit of a departure to your specific question, is looking at industrialization of housing, because before it used to be the brick and mortar, but if we want to plug that gap, we need to industrialize, because Africa is the only continent where you're having a lot of urbanization but lacking industrialization. So we want to set up factories that they can actually manufacture building materials so that all you do is assemble and you cut that development timeline.
Okay. I saw a report there by PwC that to bridge Nigeria's housing gap, we need about 700,000 housing units built each year for the next 20 years. That seems like quite a fit there. How do you see, what do you think can actually spur this kind of growth when it comes to building? Yeah. 700,000, that's quite enough.
I mean, 700,000, if you look at the National Sustainability Plan by the Minister of Housing, Mr. Raji Fashola, SAN, they're looking at 300,000, for a year, etc. So when we talk of 700,000, we believe with the right focus, it is doable, it is achievable. Now, what are we proposing as Shelter Afrique? We are saying, let's have sustainable public-private partnerships. Now, why is that important? It's important because if government provides the land, the infrastructure, what does that do? It reduces the cost of house, because now the government is contributing that. Government can even provide tax incentives for all importations to do with low-cost, large-scale housing. In the end product is going to be an affordable house. We want to see Nigerians have access to houses costing $10,000. Why? Because it is possible, but it can only be done through public-private partnerships. We as Shelter Afrique will come with the money. Behind us, you see Shelter Afrique. Behind us, we have the African Development Bank. Behind us, we have the European Investment Bank. Behind us, we actually have the AFD, the French Development Agency. In Germany, we also have KfW, and also from West Africa, we have BOAD. So not only do our shareholders contribute to equity capital for Shelter Afrique to be successful. For the last few years, we had contribution of 100 million. This is equity coming into Shelter Afrique, which we now use to leverage an additional 400 or 500 million in terms of debt. So is it possible? With the right focus, yes, it is possible, because at the end of the day, it's about large-scale, low-cost housing through public-private partnerships. And as you build these units, we as Shelter Afrique will go to the banks that are going to fund the take-up and make sure that they have access to lines of credit, which allow them to be able to match long tenures, mortgages for 20 years or so, which drops the installment per month, which makes the financial product more affordable from an installment point of view whilst you're building the units. If you have the right priced product at 10,000, you're never going to have that house without somebody. When you go to the ghost towns, that you see that there's houses unoccupied. Why is that so, lady? It's because the price is too high.
Too high.
So the landlord is saying, me, I've made my money already. I'd rather keep it not occupied until I get the right tenant. That is wrong, because you're now taking up space that should be used for large-scale, low-cost housing. So that's where our passion is. We want to work with developers that look at housing, making a profit. Of course, it's a commercial enterprise, but through economies of scale. You still make the same profit, but through a lot of different units, as opposed to wanting to make all your profit and retire on one house. We're saying build 1,000 houses and more.
But I've seen situations where, we talk about, building affordable housing.
Yes.
And when it actually happens, that affordable housing becomes expensive. How do you make sure affordable remains affordable?
Okay, that's good. So you see, we are providing financing, and we engage the developer or who our counterparty is, or even the bank, to say, you see, this money you're getting, one of the conditions within the term sheet is the end product must be X. So we are prepared to also drop the interest rates, because this is a partnership. Because in the end, what are we about? In the end, we are about ensuring that we deliver and we influence the delivery of low-cost housing, whilst we use our capital as Shelter Afrique to leverage other capital, be it debt capital, be it the development of local capital markets like the Naira bond. I think this is going to be a big success, because at the end of the day, it's going towards a very clear-cut purpose, which is the delivery of low-cost housing. You said our target per annum should be about 700,000 units. So you can see it's a crisis, because how do you get to 700,000? You've got to at least be able to do 100,000, and you build up on that. So we are not the only players, but we are the only unique institution whose sole focus is the financing of low-cost, large-scale housing for Africa, and we cover 45 countries. We're the only institution that's dealing with one product. And of course, if it's one product, we should be good at it. We should be looking for developers, and if there are developers out there that want financing for Shelter Afrique money, they must be prepared with their plans. Because we are ready, we'll have the funding. All they need to do is, of course, submit. And of course, like any institution, we want to make sure we understand how the security will play out in terms of the land, whatever contribution coming from the developer, and also the institutions or banks with a big balance sheet. So I believe that not only are we playing a huge but strategic role in ensuring that we reduce that deficit we talk of. I know, speaking to the Honorable Minister of Housing and Works and Housing, Mr. Raji Fashola, would say, don't talk about the number, how is it researched? But the reality is, whilst we accept that you need to have a basis to really be able to quantify the real shortage, but in the end, there is still a challenge or a problem.
Right.
Not only Nigeria, by the way, but all other countries. You look at South Africa, 2 million. Look at Kenya, 2 million shortage. Look at DRC, 3 million. Look at South Sudan, 4 million. You can see that there's something with Africa. Now, when you look at the penetration of mortgages supposed to support the Africans, it's unacceptably low. You can't have 0.5% mortgage penetration when other countries in the Western world are at 80%.
Africa actually has land.
Precisely, and Africa has land. So it is our commitment, it has to be, basically it has to be our moral obligation as Africans to ensure that our brothers and sisters do not live in slums. It's unacceptable. They must be given the opportunity to get access to a decent and affordable home. I say low-cost home because for a man with money, $1 million for a house in Victoria Island is affordable. But for the person we are targeting as Shelter Afrique is $10,000. Can we achieve it? Yes, we can. And has it happened before? Yes, it does. And yes, it will. And if we have developers out there that can deliver that $10,000 home, Shelter Afrique is waiting for them. If they can also have a green development, where of course they're looking at, better utilization in terms of utilities, electricity, power, etc., savings through use of solar, etc., to reduce the carbon footprint, post COP26, Shelter Afrique is there. And Shelter Afrique will be there for many, many more, provided they share the same mindset to say we will make money, but through economies of scale, over a large scale. So, I mean, lady, that's really our commitment. I'm very passionate about it. My board is very passionate about it, and I believe the management and staff of Shelter Afrique are passionate about it. That is the sole reason for our existence. In French, that is our raison d'etre for our existence. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes,
well, these are quite interesting times. We have COVID-19, inflation on the rise all over the world. But what's your outlook, for the housing sector in Nigeria and Africa?
Yeah. So my outlook, and I talk also on behalf of course, Shelter Afrique, I believe that there's going to be a seismic shift in how we see housing. I'm beginning to see governments recognizing that to make their citizens happy, they need to give them access to decent housing. Of course, if a person doesn't have a house, you just talked about traffic, but you need to be coming from somewhere. If a person doesn't have a decent house, he's not going to be happy. If a person is living in a slum, it even affects even the children, how they're going to be, the standard of living in terms of their schooling.
Your environment.
The environment,
yes.
Yes. And I'm pleased to announce that on the 24th of June, 2021, we had a Yaoundé declaration. We had an annual general meeting in Yaoundé in Cameroon, and there was a declaration by 44 housing ministers, 44 finance ministers, through a round table to say we want to commit to the industrialization of housing, to the mass production of housing. That talks to changes in technology. That talks to a mind shift from the normal brick and mortar. We Africans believe if it's not a brick by brick, it's not a house. You want to knock and say, is that a proper house? Yet when you go to America, it's all made of wood. But we still have technologies, alternative building technologies, which are much cheaper, which are much faster, where you can just manufacture and assemble, which will still do a better job than a normal brick and mortar. So that shift has been accepted. It's now about execution. It's now about implementation, and we as Shelter Afrique are playing a big but strategic role in making sure that happens. Because at the end of the day, it is a human right to have access to an affordable home. And I mean, Ladi, you can stay in a beautiful apartment, or I'm staying in a house, but my sister or cousin is staying in a slum. It's unacceptable. Of course, there's going to be civil strife. And then any government that wants to support from its people must, as a requirement, deliver on housing. And the thing about housing is it's not talk. You can't say, I'm going to give you 100,000 houses. People are going to say, yeah, show me where they are. Take me where they are. And that is the thing about our business, is that it's measurable. And it's about, we're talking today, we're launching a bond. Of course, will be launched by March 2022. You're going to ask me, of the 250 billion you raised on the market, what have you done with it? And I'll be able to show you. These are the developers from Widening. These are the top tier developers where we give their money to. We gave the money to them. At the same time, we have to follow through with the banks to also give the money so people can be able to buy those homes that are constructed. But the key here is affordability. The key here is low cost. The key here is large volume through public-private partnerships and lines of credit. Sorry, I'm a bit passionate.
Fantastic. And I share your passion, really. Anyway, we'll keep tracking your progress as you move on, and we wish you the best of luck there. Thanks, that was Mr. Andrew Chimponda, CEO Shelter Afrique. Thank you for joining me on Business Morning.
Thank you for your time, sir. Much appreciated.
All right. So we'll take a break now. When we come back, we head to the markets. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning.